Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast, Bring On. And tonight, I got a very, very special guest, Cody Hawk, wrestler and trainer, and the man, that helped Dean Ambrose make it to the WWE. And if people listened to Chris Jericho podcast last week with Dean, Dean talked about Cody. And I'm sure his Twitter and Facebook and, the phone is probably ringing since then, right?
Yep. Thanks for having me on, man. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. After the Jericho podcast, definitely saw kind of an explosion on Twitter and Facebook.
That's incredible. That's a good thing because, like I said before, there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes by a lot of people. And most of the time, the wrestlers or, the people that we see on TV get all the credit. But there's a lot of guys like you and a lot of guys like Bruce Pritchard, behind the scenes that really, really help the guys. Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins, or CM Punk doesn't become a CM Punk overnight. It takes a lot of work. And a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of years, and it starts in the gym, and it starts by being dedicated to the craft, and it takes a lot of people like you, and you have quite a credential too. I was looking on your website, and not only did you help Dean, but you helped Simon Crow and a lot of other guys, Sean Ricker, to make it to NXT, and I'm sure there's a lot of other wrestlers, that train with you and or wrestled against you, because you're still active, right? You're still wrestling.
I am still active. I'm still, still working 4 or 5 shows a month. I run a training class. We train for about 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. Still putting the time in. I've had over the years had hundreds of students pass through my class, and some of them have been fortunate enough to go on in our business and make a little bit of a name for themselves and make some money, and there have been a few like Dean Ambrose and Solomon Crow and Sean Ricker and Haley Hatred who realized their dream completely and went as far as they wanted to go, and are making the big money and doing following that dream.
That's incredible because you've been wrestling now for 18 years, so it's not something that 18 years is a long time. So it takes a toll on you physically, and as we said before on the podcast, early 40s. But there are probably mornings where you feel like you're 80, right?
Well, yeah, the thing is, I'm 41, and most of the guys that are out there wrestling now are in their, early to mid 20s, so quite a bit younger than me. I've got somewhere around 4,300 matches on my body, plus countless hours of training. I've broken just about everything you can think of to break, including my neck back in 2003.
Are you serious?
I have a steel plate and some screws holding my neck upright, and it's still out there doing it and wrestling, and I'll keep wrestling and going as hard as I can go until I can't keep up. And the moment I can't keep up with the younger guys, that'll be when I decide to hang them up.
That's I had like I said before, I had a podcast with Jesse James, Brian James, Road Dogg last week, and that's what he was talking to me. Road Dogg is about 45 years old, a little bit older than you and me, and like you said, he came back last year, and he found out it was very, very hard to keep up with the young wrestlers like the Usos or these guys, Cody Rhodes and the Shield back then. Dean, Seth, and Roman Reigns, and late 20s, but when you start at 18, 19 years old and you've been wrestling for 20 years, it's a big difference than when you start wrestling when you're 28 or 21, 29 years old, because those 10 years, takes a toll on you.
Yeah, it definitely does. I trained back when I trained for 28 months, like just a little over 2 years before I was actually allowed to have my first match. And man, by the time I actually got to have my first match, my body had already been beat up for 2.5 years almost. So lots of bumps and bruises and knocks along the way, but everything still works. So
yeah, but
just keep trucking.
Exactly. I was looking on YouTube at some of your matches, and one against John Moxley, Dean, from a few years ago. And you're wrestling a very, very tough style of wrestling. Without blood, a lot of bumps, and it's very, very similar to I would say maybe not old ECW, but it's not the style that WWE has right now, which is very. No more big bumps and no more blood. It's a very hardcore style of wrestling. That's the kind of wrestling that I really, really love and enjoy, and that I really miss.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of the real blood and guts hardcore, but I definitely love when things can go to a violent level and they make sense and you understand why it's happening, and it's not just guys out there gushing blood just to be gushing blood.
No, exactly. It's not New Jack in the ring,
Yeah, and really in today's day and age with so much with going on with bloodborne illness and just different things like that, the hardcore style has gone away a lot, and I think now it could be used to actually draw good money if things were built, wrestlers building to that hardcore style, and we make it seem 100% on the level, guys getting blood work done and tested, and the big fight feel and all that. I think it could happen, with the hardcore style now, because it's kind of been out of the game for a little while.
Exactly. And I was looking also on your website that you started training at Les Thatcher's Main Event Pro Wrestling Camp in 1997, and your ex-brother-in-law Jackson Breeze, was wrestling for WCW. So, are you still? Is he still wrestling? Is he still involved in the business?
He was actually reffing for HWA. Jackson was, and he was the one that took me to Les Thatcher's place and introduced me. And Jack, he's still around the wrestling business a little bit here and there, but he's pretty much a family guy now and doing his thing away from the business.
Okay, and when you used to train, you trained with former TNA Shark Boy and Nigel McGuinness, and are you still in touch with these guys after? Shark and I live in the same town, so we. I don't see him as much as I used to, but definitely see him here and there. And Nigel, he's on the other side of the country now, and we text every now and again, or hit each other up on Facebook, or I'll run into him randomly somewhere at a show or something. But distance and time has kind of separated us all, and but I was very fortunate. My class of people that I trained with was a pretty amazing group of guys, and over the couple of years that we were all training together, there was myself and Nigel McGuinness and Shark Boy, but there's still active wrestlers like Pepper Parks, and he was there, and there was some good talent that trained at the same time that I trained, and most of them are gone now. Though most of them are out of the business and barely doing anything. Exactly, and one thing, the last, I would say 5 or 6 months, basically all my free time is spent listening to wrestling podcasts, whether it's Colt Cabana, Stone Cold, Roddy Piper, or Chris Jericho. And the one thing that I realize is that how many times, you hear a guy talking, younger guys, older guys, whether it's Bob Orton or even young wrestlers. And the one thing that fascinates me is the fact that so many of you guys started out as being referees. And I know it took you about 2 years before you started wrestling. You were a referee for a long time before you were allowed to start wrestling. So do you think that's probably the best way to learn the business is by being a referee? You're in a ring with the guys. You're calling, well, not necessarily calling the matches, but you're kind of like the general in a ring. Does it really help when you start wrestling to have that experience?
I think it does. For me, I started training, and I was immediately made a referee just a week or two after I started training, and I was a referee for the next 2 years and 4 months until I was actually, given my first match as a wrestler. And by the time I actually got to be a wrestler, I was pretty comfortable in the ring. I had already been in the ring for 2 years. I was pretty comfortable. I was pretty comfortable with the crowd and the people and listening and knowing what I was doing, because I'd been so up close with it the whole time. And right now, as I train people, that's the guys, unless they're ginormous, huge, hulking figures, any guys that I train, that's the first thing I tell them to do. Go buy a referee shirt and get yourself booked on a show as a referee and keep learning. And then you can transition into being a wrestler when it's time.
Yeah, and when you're in a ring as a referee, you have time, to, of course, you're not getting, bumped all around the ring, but you can also look at the reaction of the crowd and see, the spots, the times where the guys could have maybe turned it up a notch, or sometimes, take a back seat or whatever. So you really can gauge the audience a little bit more. So when you start wrestling, you already have that, that experience and that feeling of the crowd, which is to me probably something that is very hard to you learn on the fly, but that 2.5 years probably made a big difference when you started really to get involved wrestling in the ring.
Yeah, and as a referee, I was very fortunate. I got to do some pretty big shows as a referee and got to referee for some pretty pretty named talent. I got to do stuff with Road Dogg and with Cactus Jack and Al Snow and a lot of at that point in time, 1997, 98. Those were some big name people, and I'm refereeing matches with people that 6 months prior I was watching on TV every week, cheering and booing for. So and then later on, I actually got to do a couple of WWE things as a referee, just because there was some people that were there that knew I had referee experience, and they were in town, and one of the Armstrongs had missed their flight, and they needed a fill-in referee for 2 matches. So I got to go do some referee stuff, and later on in my career for WWE, just because I knew what I was doing.
That's incredible. You also part of the development program in Cincinnati for WWE, in late 1998. And back then, who was in the with you in the development system in Cincinnati?
Well, when I was at HWA and Les ran the company, Les got a deal with WCW before it went under. And we were, given some good equipment and some stuff, and then very quickly WWE had bought WCW, and pretty much all those wrestlers from WCW that were mid-card guys got shipped to us. So within 1 week, we had 60 new guys there. I'm talking, Shannon Moore, Evan Courageous, Slash LaRue, Johnny the Bull, Mike Sanders. We had a whole amazing crew of guys. And then there was, 6 guys that were from Memphis that were under the WWE developmental system that they sent to us, and that would have been, the Island Boys, which was Umaga and Rosie, and the Haas brothers, Charlie and Russ, Lance Cade, and Steve Bradley.
Wow, Lance Cade. I was a big fan of Lance Cade. Sadly he's gone, but he was a big, tough dude.
Yeah, I was married to Lance Cade at HWA for about 6 months. We feuded quite extensively, and when on his departure, when he was leaving HWA and getting called up to the main show, he dropped the HWA title to me, and he did me the honor. And Lance, sadly he's gone, but such is what so many of are friends and brothers in the business.
Oh my goodness, that's so. And you mentioned Umaga. I'm a big Umaga fan, and I just saw a picture this week of the Usos, paying tribute to Umaga. Maybe might have been one of their uncles because the Samoans all related in one way or another. But I was to work with Umaga. I was outside the ring because he looked like such a beast when you were looking at him. The kind of guy that I wouldn't, if I ever wrestled, that would be the last guy I wanted to wrestle against.
Well, when I very first met him, Big Matt, Rosie, and Eddie Umaga, when I first met those two guys was at the Brian Pillman Memorial Show in 2001, and I was teamed with Lance Cade, and we were wrestling against the Island Boys. And I was pretty nervous because these dudes were so big, and Eddie Umaga, he was very, I'm not going to do anything for anybody. I don't want to. And but over the course of a year that he was with us at HWA, I got to be pretty good friends with him. And what started out as a guy who said he was never going to do anything for me in the ring ended up putting me over with a roll up right in the center of the ring and on his way out.
Wow.
So he had a very scary character, and he could be a very scary dude in real life if he wanted to be. But most of the time, he was pretty chill.
And how was it in the ring? Was he as stiff as he looked? Because when he was giving that thumb chop, it really looked like he was, driving it down your neck. It really looked like.
In all honesty, he was not. He was super perfect with me. He never hurt me in any way, shape, or form. He always took great care of me, and him and Rosie together, those were some big dudes and considerably bigger than me. And neither one of those guys. I took moonsaults from those guys. I took giant bumps from those guys. They never hurt me one bit. And always took care of me.
And that's what a real pro is all about. I remember Bret Hart once in a podcast saying that they asked him, what is the thing you're the most proud of in your career? And he said, the thing I'm the most proud of is that in 25 years, I never hurt anybody. And to me, that was like, wow, that's amazing. Because, if you get in a ring and you're stiff, of course, one of these days you're going to get somebody that's going to be stiffer than you. You're going to get a JBL or you're going to get one of those guys, or a Finlay or whatever. So, but, if he looks stiff and like you said, he's very smooth, it just shows that he's a great pro and an awesome wrestler. That's the reason why he made it to the top,
Yeah, for sure. But, you're mentioning stiff guys. I'll tell you somebody who's stiff, but stiff in a good way, and stiff the most perfect way you can be, and that's Dean Ambrose. All that aggression and stuff you see on Monday nights, I mean, that's real. That's him. It's him full tilt, but safe, stiff. Beat the crap out of you, but not send you to the ER.
I'll tell you something. I've been a big fan of the Shield from the moment they came up. And at first, when they came out, the one that was sticking out the most was Dean. After a while, they started, pushing a little bit more Roman, and Seth was left a little bit more in the background. Towards the end of their run, Seth was stealing the spotlight a little bit. But since the breakup, to me, Dean has been. First of all, just to mention that he main evented the last pay-per-view to me is a wow. Huge honor. He main evented 2 of the last 3 pay-per-views, against Seth and now against Bray Wyatt. So it's a testament to WWE. They don't do that for no reasons, right? If you're in the main event, it really means something. And I truly believe that Dean is, what we see right now is just the tip of the iceberg. I think, the sky's the limit for him.
I agree with you 100%. The only thing that could slow him down in any way, shape, or form is an injury. And the style he's wrestling and as hard as he goes, injuries can definitely happen. But yeah, sky's the limit for him. I went and hung out with him in Las Vegas earlier this year. And I was just chatting with him about, wrestling with the guys. He lived with me for a while when he was here in Cincinnati and Dayton area. he lived with me for, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And we trained together and wrestled together and rode together and all that stuff. So I was around him quite a bit. And I was like, it's kind of surreal. We used to sit in my living room and watch, wrestling every Monday or pay-per-views. And we'd pick them apart and we'd watch them. And and now here you are, and you were there, and you're working with, guys like, Triple H and The Undertaker, and you're getting to do things with, Jake the Snake Roberts, and I'm like, this is just crazy, man, and it's, good for you, congratulations, and, just keep going.
You know what, that's the only time that Dean was out of character. I remembered with the snake on him, and, you could see the smile of, it was like a satisfaction and also like of pride. I'm in the ring with Jake the Snake Roberts. That was to me probably, I'm sure if I was talking with Dean, he would probably say that's one of my top 3 moments, since I started my career, to be in a ring with Jake the Snake, and see how far Jake has come and how better he looked and everything, that's a, credit to DDP. But, I was so proud to see Jake in the ring, and to Dean to be able to have that angle with him probably was something he was really proud of. Am I right?
Yeah, he definitely enjoyed that. But you're talking about him cracking that little smile in the ring. Last week, your guest, Road Dogg, he's the reason he cracked that smile, because he was just out of camera shot making reference to the snake crapping all over Dean's chest.
Yeah, that's so true. I remember to this day that was. I'm like, okay. So that was amazing. That was the kind of thing that you can't, predict. Like when the snake bit Randy Savage for real, that was not scripted. So that snake, like you said, puked all over him. So in his face, my goodness.
Yeah, for sure. So,
but it was a great.
Live.
Exactly, and you met, Dean. He was like in his early 20s, and how was Dean back then? And did he, outside the ring, is he the same kind of guy? To me, he looks exactly like his character is not a character. What you see is what you get.
When I met Dean, he was 16. He came
16?
to me when he was 16 years old, a junior in high school, and that was when that was my first encounter with him. He did a fantasy camp with me, and then after that camp, he started hanging around, and he wasn't old enough to get on the shows yet. In the state that we live in, the athletic commission, you have to be 18 to actually wrestle, so he hung out at shows, and he helped put up the ring, and swept floors, and did his part. The moment he turned 18, he dropped his, I don't even remember what he paid, a pretty substantial amount of money, and jumped right in feet first. And in honesty, like when I started training him, anybody that was around me or our class, everybody could tell you that I said from day one, this guy, he's got it. He's going to go far. How far? Who knows? But he's going to make a lot of money.
Was it the attitude or determination or all of the above? I mean, was it the style that he had, the natural in the ring, gifted, or more like
super gifted in the ring. Didn't have to hardly teach him how to take anything. He just kind of got it. How your body's supposed to move when you flip and you flop. He just got it. He was like he already knew. I mean, here's how you do this move. Okay, I got it. Let's go on to the next move. All right, here's how you do this move. Okay, got it. Let's move on to the next move. And and he started off with a football player gimmick, and it was kind of comical and funny. But he definitely was already had that aggression to him, and that same kind of style that he goes now. Right from day one, it's just way more amped up now, and he's given the right platform to do that on. So I've known John since he was 16, and he's I think he's 25, 26 now. He kind of grew up for a few years, just kind of being one of my kids. So. That's kind of how I figured about all my students or my kids, and he's no different. I'm happy that he's making it.
And he hasn't forgotten where he came from. That's credit to the man he is. That he remembers you. He remembers the people that helped him get where he is. Because when they get to the top, a lot of people change, and they start getting a big attitude, especially in the beginning. Maybe later on in their later years, they come back to hurt. But Dean seems to be very, very. I see pictures of him on Twitter that he posts with the fans, and he seems to be very not on Twitter but Instagram, social media. He seems to be very close to his fans. Doesn't seem to have that big ego that most guys have, and never heard any. I read every website, whether it's Bleacher Report or I never read a bad comment of anybody about Dean. In all the years that I've been following all these sites, I never heard one bad comment from anybody, whether it's a backstage or, in a ring. He seems to be very well liked by the other wrestlers. And was it the same thing at in wrestling school? Was he respected by the other guys you were training at the same time?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody could see it. Everybody could see that he was the hardest working guy there. That he was, he was the guy that asked me if he could get a key to the gym so he could put in more time in the ring, and everybody could see it. So he was, the veteran guys that were there. Everybody knew it, and he was real respected, and and he was a real chill, calm, respectful guy. So nobody really had any reason, not to like him, or and that's carried over. And every interview he does, and it goes back to his training. He always mentions me. He always throws it out there, Solomon Crow, that's another one. He's down at NXT now. Anytime he does an interview or anything, he puts me over and credits his training back to me. And I think those guys are class acts. You don't forget where you came from. You don't forget the people who helped you along the way. And because at the end of the day, it doesn't pay. It doesn't pay to forget about people.
Hey, I totally agree with you. And we have Catherine on Twitter asking you, Cody, can you... she's asking me if I can ask you a funny story about Dean when he was in the HWA, when he first started out. A blooper reel or something.
Okay, so what's the question?
She wants to know a funny story that you could share with us about Dean, when he first started out.
Let's see, funny story about Dean. Well, there was a time that we were we had an office to the arena where we wrestled at. There was an office area, and that's where my desk was usually at. So and it was air conditioned there, and the rest of the place was like 115 degrees. So we were up in the office, and we were kind of getting ready for a match, and Dean and I were in whatever the match was, the main event of that show. It was either a tag match or me versus him in a singles match. I don't remember. But we were sitting there and watching the monitor and watching the other matches going on. And it's kind of dark in there. And he was, talking to himself and thinking about what he was going to do. And he reached back and he grabbed a bottle of water and just turned it up and started gulping on it. And after about 3 or 4 big gulps, I just kind of looked over at him, and I could see his eyes kind of bugging out of his head a little bit. And he ran out the front door, and I was like, well, I wonder what that was. I stick my head out the front door, and he's around the corner of the building, and he's unloading the contents of his mouth, and then he comes back and find out it was his bottle of dip spit that he had been collecting for about 4 hours. So he had just chugged a big bunch of that, and 5 minutes later we were out in the wrestling ring doing our thing, and he was spot on, and didn't miss a beat. True professional.
That's a pro. That's a pro. I've heard stories similar to that. With guys, being sick and puking before matches, like 5 or 6 minutes, or almost passed out in the dressing room, and they go out to have 20, 25-minute matches. Somehow, I think some people are just born to do this. They just have a natural gift that you can't. It's not something you can teach. You can't teach somebody to have art and determination. It's something you either have it or not. You can show them moves and stuff like that, but to have that that will, that passion, that drive. It's not something you can teach somebody, right? You probably see a lot of that, in your you probably know the guys that you train, after a few weeks. You probably already know the ones that are going to make it and the ones that are going to quit pretty quick.
Yeah, typically when I meet people and they come in and they get in the ring the first time, and they feel out that ring, you can kind of gauge a person pretty quickly, and the moment they fall on that ring, and they either fall good and they need a little bit of correcting, or they fall horribly, horribly bad, and it does nothing but get worse from there. So yeah, it doesn't take too long to decide in my brain, this person, has some sort of future. This person has no future. This person could potentially go on and make it all the way to the top of the ladder. And I've been wrong on occasion. There have been some people that showed up horribly uncoordinated, out of shape, and busted their butts and worked really, really hard and did everything that they could possibly do to better themselves. And then, at the end of the day, found themselves being pretty decent wrestlers. Solomon Crow, we were talking about him. He actually was out there wrestling a little bit before he came to me for training, and he was just kind of, doing. I think he had his own ring somewhere, and he had done a 6-week class with Shark Boy, and then he came to my school and signed up with us, and he was with us for like the next 3 or 4 years. And he was, he was 315 pounds, and he was round as could be. He's not a very tall guy, so he looked like a beach ball, and that was his gimmick. He was Cannonball Callahan, and he asked me about a diet, and we put him on a diet, and we got him a workout plan, and that guy, he stuck to that diet, and he worked out, and he busted his butt, and fast forward a couple of years, he's traveling the world, he's working, for CZW, for Ring of Honor, for Dragon Gate, and then, bam, WWE snaps him up, and now he's at NXT down in Florida, and he's no longer Sami Callihan, he's Solomon Crow, and, there's the perfect person, you can say, came in and didn't have all the tools, but worked really, really hard to get all the tools.
You're right, because I was listening to Bray Wyatt on a Steve Austin podcast about 2 weeks ago, and Bray was talking the difference between him and his brother Bo, and he said, I was not naturally gifted like my brother, but I had to work my strength, which was my character, and learn to incorporate great wrestling moves, but at the same time you have to know your limitations and work with your strengths. And that's the one thing, sometimes, you have a guy like Dean who has both, not only a great character, but also the physical tools to make it to the top, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely so. Dean has all the right tools, Sammy has all the right tools. I had another kid who was down there at NXT. His name's Sean Ricker, and he was working as Slate Randall down there at NXT. Got an amazing body, very gifted athlete, and unfortunately for him, WWE didn't have a place for him anymore, and he was released, a couple of months back. But he's back out on the West Coast now, and he's wrestling out there, making some money, and he's a guy that I could see them calling back at some point and giving another look at. So.
Because they can't give up, they're still young, and the future, of course, WWE is not right. It's the only big federation, but there's TNA, there's Ring of Honor, like you said, there's a lot of federations, and a lot of people are talking about the death of the World Class or WCW or CW. But when I look right now, I think that the wrestling landscape is very healthy. There's so many promotions, and it seems to me like there's a lot of them right now compared to a few years ago. Is it just me, or there's Dragon Gate? There's a lot of Ring of Honor is doing very, very good, and there's a lot of very good federations, in the United States.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of good feds out there. the big money, though, WWE and TNA are the only places that you're going to find the big money. Here in the United States, the guys at Ring of Honor, your top guys, they're making some decent money, but the rest of the guys, they're making enough to survive, but they're not making enough to retire on. Of course, if you can get yourself overseas, Carl Machine Gun Anderson is a perfect example of a guy who came out of the same area, Cincinnati, from where I was from. He transitioned out to Japan. Now he's part of the Bullet Club out there, and he's been one of their big main champs for quite a long time, and he's making some serious good money in Japan. But if you're not lucky enough to make it to WWE or to TNA or to one of the big companies overseas, the money is decent, but it's not enough money that you're going to be able to put it away and live on and retire off of.
You're going to have to keep involved in the business, and probably as a trainer or behind the scenes. That's one of the, because once you're involved in the wrestling business, I found out that it's almost impossible. It's like a drug. Everybody stays involved one way or another. You rarely see a guy leave the business completely.
Yeah, I know. I've started my a separate business and a new venture, and I try to devote more time to it. Knowing that I'm a little older and that my body's beat up, so I'm like, I have my other half who doesn't want me to physically get out there and beat myself up too much anymore. And I try to put all this time and effort into my other business, and people keep calling me, hey, we got a show, and I can pay you this. You want to come? I'm like, oh, gosh, yeah, I really do. I really want to. So, it's hard to get away from. It's hard to just put it down. When you said it's like a drug, I have said that for years. It's like a drug that is the most addicting thing in the world, that rush and that feeling of getting out there in front of people and doing your thing.
Exactly. I'm a paranormal investigator. Sometimes I'm on the road, and sometimes we have like 3 or 4 investigations lined up, one after another. The only way I can really relax is waking up in the morning, watching Raw, or going to Bleacher Report and just read about wrestling. Wrestling is like, not just for the wrestlers, but for the hardcore fans, it's part of our lives. Since I'm 4 years old, I've been following wrestling. It's like, basically, sleeping, working, tweeting, investigating, taking care of the kids, making supper, or watching wrestling. That's about, it's a drug, not just for the wrestlers themselves, but the fans. And that's why they're so passionate. And that's why there's so many people, interacting, and so many internet wrestlers, that have so much passionate fans. Like Dean is one of them, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and because these guys have worked from, they started from scratch to get where they're at, and that's why they get the respect from the fans that they get.
Yeah, for sure, and and we as wrestlers, most of us grew up watching wrestling, and it was our passion, and it was something that we loved, and aspired to be, and some people actually got to go out there and fulfill that dream and become wrestlers and do that, and the crop of guys that's there now that's starting to make big names for themselves. You look at all those guys; all those guys were independent wrestlers before they were mainstream wrestlers. They all cut their teeth on the indie level, and that's a good thing. I think those guys were seasoned wrestlers before they ever even got to the big show.
That's true. And we have Danny Bartley on Twitter asking you, Cody, if you had to name one wrestler, either right now or in the past, that could have the best match with Dean Ambrose right now, who do you think it would be? Whether active wrestler or a past wrestler?
Somebody just asked me this the other day, and I got a little bit of heat for saying it, but the match that I would love to see would be Dean Ambrose against Chris Benoit.
Oh my God, that would be incredible.
I think that would be one of the hardest hitting, most action-packed matches that we could see.
That would be an incredible match. And from the active roster right now, or the guys still involved in the business, who do you think could have the best match with Dean?
He's so easy to work with in the ring. Anybody could have a 5-star match with him any night of the week. So as to who could have the best match with him, who knows? There's a whole lot of those guys up there that are damn good, and you add him to the equation, and the potential for an amazing 5-star match is there with just about anybody he gets in the ring with.
I agree.
I'd like to see him. I think, I definitely know that the feud with Seth Rollins, it can't be over with yet. It's definitely going to have to go forward
right.
at some point, I think. It'd be interesting to see, if him and Roman Reigns ever come to blows.
It would be awesome. It would be awesome. Another match, I was looking at today from NXT from last night, and I see big money. Dean Ambrose, Kevin Steen feud down the road. Do you agree with me? Yeah, Kevin Steen's got that almost lunatic fringe style, also very hard hitting wrestler, and I
agree.
That would be an amazing, just on the mic, probably the best, feud on the mic you could think of would be these two.
I agree. I think that would be a definite, a good feud, hard hitting, and very entertaining to watch. Unfortunately, my opinion doesn't really matter. So,
you know what? If we were the main writers for WWE, that would be a different story.
How does one get one of those jobs as a writer for WWE? Because I'd sure love to write for them.
My goodness, you're right, because, I like Stone Cold was saying back in the day, it was Vince with Pat Patterson singing, besides the pool, booking the show and writing the show, and now there's a lot of writers, and I think, we're going to take a 2-minute break, okay, and come back for the last 20 minutes of the podcast, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Great.
All right.